How does this gospel make you feel? How does it land in your body? It's not super comforting, is it? I mean, I can feel myself tensing up every time I hear it. One will be taken, one will be left. Yeesh. And then that command, keep awake, that we hear from both Jesus in Matthew and from Paul. Now is the time for you to wake from sleep. That doesn't really help either, does it? I mean, someone yelling, wake up at me just makes me more tense. One of the retreats that I took this fall, a leader said, yelling at people to wake up, wake up, wake up is only a way to guarantee that they will remain completely spiritually asleep, just more nervously so. And that kind of feels like how that gospel leaves us, is sort of asleep but nervous about it. But then what does waking up really mean? Does it just mean, uh-oh, Jesus is coming, everybody look busy? That's not what it means, right? I hope not. Waking up is a question that I've been working with for many years, and that I did do some deeper work with it while I was away, so I want to share a little bit of what I learned. And it actually builds on the last two sermons. So I just want to remind you that we need to look up occasionally and find that far horizon, again, that Isaiah describes in such wonderful detail again today, right? Swords beaten into plowshares, not learning war anymore. And Jesus even sneaks in a reminder about how bad we are at judging how far away or so close that horizon is, but about that day and hour, no one knows. So we work on the horizon. We also are working on separating hope from outcomes and learning how to, as Paul says, put on the armor of light, put on Christ, which is another way of saying find that deep river of hope that always flows in us, no matter what chaos is going on in the world. And as we carry both of those practices with us, we finally arrive fully in Advent today with its clarion call to wake from sleep, to stay awake, to be ready. But what does that really mean? All spiritual traditions talk about some kind of preparation or awakening or enlightenment, but then they get very cagey about how to actually do that. And the image that we have mostly of waking up or enlightenment is usually some version of like Paul on the road to Damascus, right? An intense outward experience. You're just walking along and boom, the heavens open up and you're enlightened. Or it's the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. It's an intense inner experience. You're meditating all night, but then again, suddenly, boom, you're enlightened. And either way, if we think of it that way, it feels very random, right? Like either enlightenment happens or it doesn't. Either you're the one who gets it or you're not. You're the one taken or you're the one left. But if it's just random, why bother telling us to wake up? I mean, it must be something that we're capable of participating in. But then, if it is, maybe there should be some instructions. It would be helpful if there was a kind of a map, wouldn't it? Well, it turns out that there is, and one of the maps that I've been focusing on and spent some time studying this fall and learning more about is the map of our three centers of intelligence. We all have three interrelated but discrete systems of learning, knowing, and responding to the world. Now, ancient religious traditions figured this out long, long ago, but modern Western science is finally catching up and beginning to reveal much of the same thing. We all have an intellectual center, an emotional center, and a moving center of intelligence. And they can all function together, but more often, because of the bazillion experiences that we have all had since we were little and all of the ways that we have been imprinted with certain patterns for responding to the world, more often those centers operate at odds or in conflict with one another. And so one way to think about waking up is learning how to pay attention to when those centers are aligned and when they're not. So just to briefly describe the centers so we're kind of all on the same page. The moving center is what allows you to do things like walk down the stairs without thinking about every single step you take. It's what takes over when you're riding a bike or when you're doing yoga or Tai Chi. Working with the moving center is why the practice of chopping wood and carrying water is so important in many traditions, because those simple, physical, repetitive acts support and enhance the moving center. You can also see and sense it at work here in the gestures that many of us make, right? The sign of the cross, the Oran's position for prayer, bowing. That's all the moving center at work. The intellectual center, which we way overuse in the West to the point of practically frying it out most of the time, the intellectual center is an incredible tool for categorizing, for making distinctions, for coming to decisions. It looks out at the world and it immediately begins to break things down into its constituent parts and trying to understand them separately. It is really, really good at splitting things into binaries. This, that, good, bad, dark, light, us, them, which makes it really good for things like scientific inquiry and marketing and, frankly, learning war. But it can really get in the way of spiritual growth. Cynthia Bourgeault often says that trying to answer existential or spiritual questions like, who am I, or who is God, with our intellectual center alone is like trying to play the violin with a chainsaw. And it's not that the chainsaw is bad, it's just the wrong tool, right? The chainsaw's nature is to cut and separate, not make music. Our minds are excellent at dissecting and discriminating and categorizing and sorting. And I think that's why we get tense when we hear things like one will be taken and one will be left, because we automatically start trying to figure out what's the difference between those two. And how can I make sure that I have the right qualities so that I'm the one who makes it? The emotional center is honestly the one that I am still really trying to get a handle on, because it's not simply getting in touch with your feelings. Because too often getting in touch with your feelings really just means getting caught up in a story about how something affects me. Something happens, and if I can blame someone else, then I feel angry. But if I think I'm to blame, then I feel shame. But in both cases, I'm sort of the star of that show, right? Emotions are really the stories we tell about how something affects us. And things really do affect us in very profound ways. But the emotional center is really more about picking up resonances and getting to a deeper knowing. It might be closer to something like picking up the vibes of a situation, but really it's about knowing what the situation really needs. The emotional center is really about seeing with clarity and with compassion. Okay, there's a lot more to say about all of that, and if you're interested, let me know, and maybe I'll lead a study group on the book, The Wisdom Way of Knowing, in the coming year, which is where most of this comes from. But right now, we're at the beginning of Advent, so I just want to leave you with two very simple practices, deceptively simple practices, that you can begin experimenting with to help you start to get a handle on this. One you're probably already familiar with because you hear it all the time, and that is simply taking some deep, intentional breaths. Go ahead, just do that. Taking a deep breath connects you to your moving center in ways that are really, really helpful. So that's a very simple practice. The other one might seem kind of dumb when you first hear about it, but it is the one that I actually find to be the most helpful, which is why you might occasionally hear me invite you to find your feet. So take a moment and just sense your feet, or sense your hands if sensing your feet is too difficult for you. If you just put your attention in your feet, you might notice a slight sensation of them coming alive or coming online. And if you don't, that's okay. Just pay attention to whatever is there. Like intentional breathing, if you stop and simply sense your feet for a few moments throughout the day, what you're doing is you're bringing your moving center more online. And the more you can do that, the more your intellectual center can start to relax and back off a bit. And when that starts to happen, you might get a little jolt of, oh, right, I'm here in the world. This is where I am. And when you have that sensation, that's a clue that all three centers are just a little bit more aligned than they were just a moment ago. So I invite you to experiment with that in the coming month. I don't know, try setting an alarm for certain times of the day, like 9 a.m. and noon and 3 p.m., 5 p.m., whatever. But when that alarm goes off, just stop and take a moment and find your feet and really sense into them. And pay attention to what happens in the rest of your being when you do that. And if you'd like, let me know what that experience is like for you. That'll be our Advent practice. And may we all have a blessed Advent. Amen.